Hello and welcome. I'm Jim,
Hey, I'm Dom.
and we're part of the Hubs team here at Mozilla, and we're talking today about something actually not related to Blender for once. We're talking about Spoke. Actually, if you're not familiar with Spoke, Spoke is the editor that can be used to create virtual spaces for use in Hubs, amongst other things. But um, figure one of the big things that comes up a lot is people ask a lot of questions in the Discord about how can I make a clickable thing so that I can make a person teleport to a specific place, or is there a way to make people be able to sort of sit down in a way, or like not be able to move, or like I have a classroom of kids and they all want to run around and I want them all stuck in one spot, uh, or in individual spots, I should say. And so today we're going to actually talk about ways that you can do that using what we call waypoints. Um, uh, there's been a lot of questions in the past about like once people discover waypoints, they usually go, well, then what's the difference between a waypoint and a spawn point? And we'll talk about that today too. It's a very good question, and yeah, I don't know. Do you have anything to add to that before we
Yeah,
get
and we
into it?
also we also recently rolled out a new feature where you can link directly to a waypoint. So this is both like if you just paste in the URL into the URL bar, or using the link element in Spoke, you can link directly to a specific waypoint. Um, yeah, talk this way,
I'm looking at here.
and yeah, so that's a new feature we have, and I think people are finding like it's kind of cool that people have found ways to use it that we weren't even expecting. We just added this feature, and then people are like, "Oh, actually, you can link to this from within a room too," and then it kind of acts as a teleporter within the same room. And we're like, "Oh yeah, that was actually completely unintended side effect of just using URLs to the way URLs are intended to be used." That's kind of one of the big powers of the way we do stuff. Relying on the web just ends up working out that things work. And like, we've also seen people be able to use this link thing with like if you want to do ticketing and you want to have assigned seating, you can literally include their seat number as part of the link that you send them, and then they'll end up in the right seat. Things like
Right.
that
So I
just kind
guess
of
you could
automatically
have,
work.
yeah, you could like pay for a ticket for a specific seat in a venue,
hmm
right? And
Yeah, exactly, and then put that in there.
that would be pretty cool.
And it's not like cryptographically secure or anything, but
No, no,
it definitely helps.
but we definitely have people who are asking about like scenarios where they're like, well, I'm going to perform and I don't want people to be able to, you know, spawn in where I spawn in. I want to be backstage and then I want to come out.
Right.
And you can
Yeah,
do
so
some
being able to
clever
spawn
things
at
to
a
do that.
specific spawn point, exactly. Like you can create a bunch, and we'll talk about this, but you can create a bunch of waypoints that are spawn points, and then create one that's not a spawn point, and then use that in a link that only you're going to go to spawn in a different spot.
Exactly. Well, so I guess without further ado, I'm going to switch over to my like web view here,
hmm
so that we can talk about Spoke. If you're not familiar with how to get to Spoke, you can do it from the Hub's main page from hubs.mozilla.com, and there's a link at the top for like what does it say? I forget what it says. It says like
I think it says
it
spoke,
used to
or if
say
you're on a
Spoke.
Hub's cloud, it says scene editor maybe.
Oh yeah, there it is. Okay,
Um,
so it says Spoke at the top.
yeah, if you're on hubs.mozilla.com, it'll say spoke. If you're on a Hubs cloud instance, I believe it'll say scene editor. If you have that enabled, that's something you have to enable in the admin panel for your Hubs cloud instance if you want people to be able to use spoke on your own Hubs cloud.
Cool. Yeah. So if you end up here on the main page, you can make a new project and go from there. Um, I'll talk about maybe in a new blank project first, just to keep it really simple. I'm going to use this wide open space template and go from there. So in this template, it's really as basic as it gets. It
hmm
is just a giant plane, um, and in the middle of it, well, the origin's right about there where I'm pointing with my cursor, but um, there are four spawn points, and spawn points are the traditional way to get players to show up into your space. And people have asked this in the past about how it works. Do you want to explain, Dom, like the how does it decide like which?
Yeah, so I mean the basic functionality of spawn points is it's just literally going to randomly assign you to one of these spawn points. Um, I believe this is true for spawn points. I know it's true for waypoints that are configured as spawn points, which I think is the same thing now. That if someone is already spawned in that spawn point, it will wait until they have moved away to use that one again. So it'll kind of round robin, or it'll randomly assign to available spawn points. And then if it's already filled them, I believe you'll kind of just end up at the origin or something like that. But so you want to definitely have a decent number of spawn points.
If you start
Um,
your scene with just one spawn point, that's where you run into the thing where like
Everyone will kind of just spawn in the same
you're
spot,
like
and that's
inside somebody's head when you show
yeah,
up, right?
yep.
We designed these spawn points and waypoints actually using the sort of robot avatar. That's the actual size of the avatar, and the point at the bottom, the little like cone sort of triangle thing, is exactly the spot on the ground where you spawn in. That's like sort
Hmm.
of where the base
And
of
you'll
your
you'll end up snapping to the nav mesh once you move, and I believe even exactly when you spawn, so you don't have to get the position exactly correct, but basically at that point, then we'll kind of find the ground underneath it. Um, but and then you'll see it also has a direction, so it's pointing in an arrow. That's the way they're going to be facing when they join the room. So like if you want them looking in a particular direction, you can also control that with the spawn point.
not only where they're facing, but actually where exactly in height off the ground
Hmm.
their camera will be. So it'll be exactly equidistant between the eye bones of this
Hmm.
avatar. We've talked about that in previous streams, but we added this just so that it was a lot clearer, like where you'd be looking and you know how high you'd be off the ground by default. So these spawn points are very basic. There's only transform information for them, just position and rotation and scale. The scale doesn't really do anything on a spawn point, as far as I know. Um, but the alternative to using a spawn point is using what's called a waypoint. Now, I'm going to expand this a little bit so you can see the different elements that we have here. Um, their icons are identical. Sorry, but and actually the way they look in the world is the same. Really, the way that we look at this is that waypoints are like the more powerful spawn point. They're like spawn
Hmm.
point 2.0 in a way. And if you're wondering like, well, should I use one or the other? Really, you might as well kind of move forward just using waypoints.
Yeah, I mean, spawn points are just a pre-configured waypoint. Basically, like it's just a waypoint with a specific set of options already set. We might eventually just change it such that it literally does that, even if we keep spawn point as an option in the elements, just so people can find it more easily. We might make it so that like when you drop one in, it just creates a waypoint with pre-configured options, because that's actually what's happening under the hood. So it might actually be more confusing this way uh,
I think
that we
so.
have it right now. So
Given the questions that we get, yeah, I would
exactly,
say
yeah.
so. But I'm going to turn off the grid here, so it's a little distracting. Okay. By the way, you can also toggle the grid visibility. Wait, how do you do that? I thought there was a hotkey for it. Maybe not. I forget.
There might be, but I don't remember what
I
it is.
forget it now. Never mind. Ignore me. It's not important. To start with, I'm actually going to go ahead and delete all of these spawn points just by selecting them in the hierarchy there. It's sometimes easier, and then just hit delete, and they'll go away. And instead, I'm going to place a waypoint. So when I place one of these, it's a little bit different in the sense that um, instead of just all these transform things, you have more options below. And this is really what defines a waypoint and what makes it cool. First and foremost, you have the option to make it a spawn point. So
Right.
if you want this to be something that when somebody joins your hubs room, they just are in that spot, that's how you do it. And most of the time, you will probably use that feature, especially if you've deleted all your spawn points and you need a way to get in. By the way,
Yeah, I mean, if
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 you
you
don't
just
have
create a
any, what happens? Do you know?
if you don't have any, you probably spawn at the origin, but I'm not even sure.
I
I
think
mean,
you're
like
right.
all the default scenes we create, the project templates we have some sort of spawn point in them. And if you create a waypoint and don't check any of those boxes, you basically have it's just a named anchor in space, and you're not gonna be able to click on it. You won't automatically spawn at it, but
It's
it will have a
useless,
name, and
pretty much.
it'll have a name so you can link to it, which
Oh,
can be useful.
that's
Um,
true.
but so the default configuration of a waypoint might be kind of confusing to people, but yeah, so you're probably going to want to check at least some of these boxes.
And
So
one
we can
thing,
kind of go through them.
yeah, and if you roll over your mouse on these little question marks, it'll explain what they do.
Hmm.
One thing I will point out, though, especially as we get into the sort of like naming, like where do you want somebody to spawn from the specific URL is naming these waypoints becomes very important because that's
Hmm.
how it's going to get the name. And it also becomes important if you are trying to make a spawnable spot that you don't want people to get to except for you, or like, a performer or something. You might want to choose a name that's like a little harder to guess
Hmm.
than just like waypoint number 8 or something, or you know whatever.
Yeah, and I wouldn't use these for anything like super secure or anything.
Nope.
That then the name is going to be something you can download the GLTF file and find. But I think it will be useful for keeping honest people honest, sort
Yeah.
of thing.
And so I'll leave it just as waypoint for now. But so we've
Hmm.
covered that, whether it's a spawn point. There is the next one called can be occupied, and that one explains here after each use. In other words, each time somebody clicks on it or spawns into it, the waypoint will be disabled until the previous user moves away from it. So I don't know
Right.
exactly how far they have to move. It's probably some hard coded number, but
Yeah, I don't remember the exact distance, but yeah, like the basic point of that is so that um, you can do this for spawn points, but you can also just do it for regular waypoints. Like if someone has clicked on that waypoint and they're in it, then that waypoint won't be clickable by other people, or if it's a spawn point, it won't be used for spawning. Like right now, if you just create spawn point like that, that will be available regardless if people have already spawned in it. Like so, as the scene is configured right now, everyone's just going to spawn in that one spot, and even if you had two of these you would have people overlapping because you didn't make it occupiable. So if you want specifically people not to spawn on top of each other, you would create a waypoint with spawnable and occupiable, which means like okay, once someone has spawned in this location, it's going to be taken until they move away.
exactly. And because it's occupied, if somebody else tried to spawn in and there was nowhere else to spawn, it would probably put them at the origin,
I think that's right.
or again, next available one. So beyond that, this is where it starts getting interesting. The one called Clickable, and I think people miss this one a lot because they don't quite understand what they're for.
Hmm.
Um, these do not have to be spawn points. In other
Right.
words, these actually will live in your hub's scene, and you can see them when you hold down the space bar or your A button on your Oculus controller or something.
Hmm.
They show up as a little icon. I'll get to that in a minute. And then you can actually click your mouse on them or your cursor on them, and you will essentially teleport to that spot.
Yep.
And so, in order to do that, it has to be marked as clickable. If it's not, it
If it's not, it won't show up there
yeah, it
basically.
just won't show up like that. And then as we move down the list here, disable motion. This can be used with or without clickable. Like it could be used as a spawn point. Like
Hmm.
in the case, for example, you had a classroom setting with a bunch of middle schoolers or something, and you were like, well, I want them to spawn in a specific seat, and I
And not
do
be able to
not want them to
move.
get out of their
Yeah.
seat and
Yep.
start flying around and doing weird things. And the same would go for a seat, like around a conference table or something. You could let somebody click on it, say, and then once they're in that seat, they can't accidentally or on purpose move out of that seat. I actually like disable motion because um, in the case where maybe you have a new user who is
Yeah,
not
yeah, it can be
comfortable.
useful for certain kinds of uses. Like if you want to create a scene that, yeah, like where everyone is just gonna kind of be facing at each other at a table or sitting in a seat watching a presenter or something like that. Yeah, it just gives less people options to accidentally look the wrong way or do something they didn't intend to do.
Accidentally
Um,
teleport into someone's
mhm.
lap or something. That which is actually the next one, disable teleporting.
Right.
When it, I should specify when I say disable motion, that means like left stick motion or
WASD arrow keys.
WASD.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and so one nice kind of configuration you can do is you make it clickable, occupiable, and disable motion, but allow teleporting. That's a nice way to make a seat, for example. So you can click on it. That'll put you into the chair or whatever. You'll be there, and you won't be able to like arrow keys around, but you'll be able to teleport to get back out. To walk around again or to switch to another seat.
And that's a
Um,
little more purposeful. So
mhm.
I think what I've found is that um, if you don't have disable motion on, people will often accidentally move out of the seat, usually because they were like trying to type in the text field or
Yeah, or just
something, and
fidgeting or
just
whatever. But yeah,
yeah.
like the kind of making a seat by using disable motion and occupiable and clickable is a nice little recipe. for waypoints.
So we've covered disabled teleporting, and then the next one is snap to floor plan, and this one, as it describes here, avatars will move as close as they can to this waypoint, but will not leave the ground. In other words, you can put one of these up in the air. Let's say
Hmm.
you wanted a this new mouse has a really spinny wheel. If you move this up in the air, you could allow someone to spawn in up in the air and be locked in place, and all the other things we just talked about. Um, but you may actually not want that. You may want them to like get close to it, but then actually snap down onto like the closest spot on the floor underneath.
Hmm.
We talked about floor plan last week. I'm not going to get all into that, but was that last week or
Yeah,
did
and
we?
without, I forget, I think that was
2 weeks
two
ago. I
weeks
don't
ago.
know.
Uh, um, with that one, so like if you don't snap to the floor plan, and you go to a waypoint that's not on the ground, you'll actually switch into flying mode temporarily. We have this slash fly, or you can hit the G key to fly around. If you teleport to a waypoint that's in the sky and does not have snap to floor plan on, you'll be flying until you touch the ground again, and then you'll automatically switch back out of flying mode. Um, but that's like a nice way to, you can create like an overlook area or something like that to look down on a scene. And especially if you use disable motion or something like that, you can have them kind of go up there and look around, and then they can teleport back down to get out of it. Or um, yeah, like these are pretty, the waypoints are pretty like generic. They have lots of little different options, and by kind of combining the different sets of options, you can get lots of different functionality out of them, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I like that we kept it granular enough that you could
Hmm.
sort of invent your own
Yeah,
usage.
it makes it kind of confusing to use at first, because it's not just like, okay, I want a
A seat.
spawn point, or I want a seat, or what. Yeah, but by allowing all these different options, we get all those things with one tool, which is really nice. Because once you learn this, you'll be able to do lots of different things.
Similarly, like as far as like a spawn point being up in the air, you may actually want it somewhat in the ground. Like you may want somebody to spawn so their head is
Hmm.
like
Hmm.
very low to the ground, and you don't want them to automatically snap up onto this. So
Right.
you would leave that off for this sort of a scenario where you wanted it low down. Um, the very last feature is called maintain initial orientation, and you could think of it this way: if this is a clickable waypoint, and I'm over here, and I see the little icon pop up, and I click on it, do you want me to teleport into it and then face that direction, or do you want me to just keep facing the way I was facing?
Hmm.
It may be a little weird to think about, well, why would I ever want it to not face? Well, an example might be you have a waypoint that's just used as a shortcut to somewhere,
Exactly.
take me to the top of those stairs or take me to the bottom of those stairs or something. Um, you wouldn't necessarily want the avatar to turn around and get
Right.
sort
You
of
don't particularly care which
disoriented.
direction it's facing. You just kind of want to move them, not rotate them.
Exactly.
Um, and and so you but you might want the opposite also. Like you might want a thing that's overlooking and looking at a very particular spot. It's like, okay, I want them to be viewing this scene from this angle at this spot. Then you can leave that unchecked, and then it'll face them specifically the way the spawn point is facing,
Right.
or the waypoint is facing.
Now it is worth noting that when we talk about orientation on a waypoint, the way that we've designed this right now, the only orientation that matters is rotating on this axis.
Hmm.
Um, we do not support putting a user like at an angle like that. They'll
Yeah.
just keep facing with their head upright.
Yeah, and the reason we've done that is just it's mostly like a usability sort of issue. Like we don't,
We don't want you
because
to
then,
accidentally do this and then people spawn in and they're like all like
well, and then how do they move after that? Because right now all the movement controls kind of assume that you're flat on the ground, and you can't roll, because there's no way for them to roll themselves back. So you'd have to teleport to another waypoint. So we just decided to just not allow that for right now. But it's possible we'll allow that in the future in
I could
some
see
in some
having another
form.
flag that said like allow, you know,
Yeah,
weird
roll
weird
and pitch.
angles. I don't know, whatever you want to call it. Because it would kind of be cool if I could like spawn onto a wall or upside down or something
Right.
like
It's
that.
just
But
right now we have no way to like walk on the wall, for example. We don't have multiple floor plans that you could have in different orientations and that sort of
right,
stuff. So it was just easier just
didn't
to not.
didn't make a lot of sense.
But we do want you to be able to point them in some direction that way. So
Now, the one thing that is kind of a delightful surprise to a lot of people is even though we don't support like weird angles like that, what we do support is scale. So if you were to take your waypoint and use like these scale values and just blow it up real big like that, when you click on this waypoint or spawn into this waypoint, your avatar will actually be this big.
mhm.
Or likewise, you could put somebody in a situation where they're like super small, like maybe you want them to be like a mouse uh, on the conference table while everyone else is sitting around it or something. Your mileage may vary on this.
Yeah.
One thing I want to point out is that even though this does work and it's supported, there are a few bugs. I'll say it that way. There's a few
Yeah, I
bugs
mean,
with like
in
how it
general,
behaves, but
with scaling scaling your avatar in general, like whether it's through this or with the grow and shrink commands, um, it's there's some bugs with graphical bugs, like the render distance ends up changing, because we end up scaling your camera too, so you'll get some weird artifacts. I mean, it can be fun to do, but I just be aware that it's kind of a little iffy.
I'll say it's
The other
supported, but not necessarily 100%.
recommended.
Yeah.
But I think it can be really fun for certain scenes. And like what one thing to keep in mind too is like they need a way to get back to their original size, probably, if you want that. So, either making another waypoint, or they could use the shrink command to get back down. Well, one nice kind of recipe for if you want to do that like big, have them blow up big, is to disable motion, make it occupiable, disable motion, and even disable teleporting, um, and then make another waypoint for them to teleport to get out of it, basically. So
So
so they'll get
if
big.
this was a big one, you might make sure that wherever the person is looking, for example, that they can easily
See
see
the other
this
waypoint
this
exactly,
one
but
to get back, right?
right, but
And
then you disable movement and teleporting on the big one and make it occupiable and clickable. So then you can basically click on that, you get big, you can look around, but you can't move out of it by teleporting or moving. But you don't, you're kind of forced to, if you want to get small again, to click back on that waypoint. And that's kind of a cool recipe for doing that sort of thing. Like if you wanted to do, like you said, the thing on the conference table where you want to get small on the conference table in a snow globe or something, you can make that and then have a thing that lets them teleport back out to one of the chairs around the conference table. That's kind of a cool way to do that with minimal issues, I guess.
yeah, I don't know if you played the game Fisherman's Tale on I think maybe
I've
it's
heard good
only on
things.
Quest.
Yeah, I've heard good
They do
things.
a lot of really really cool. I won't give any spoilers, but they do a lot of really cool stuff with scale.
Hmm.
Sometimes you're giant, sometimes you're tiny, and that kind
That's
of
cool.
stuff, or both. So that's just how the features work. I'm going to open up a scene that I was setting up so we could demonstrate some of these features, like how would we go through, and if anybody, I don't know if anybody's watching, if anybody has any questions they want to ask while I'm doing this, it's not a bad time. But I'm going. This is a scene that I made out of the architecture kit plus some additional props and things that I threw together. Um, in this particular space, there are some seats in it. There are different rooms to go to, and then I also like this because there's this cliff background. Let me turn off the grid. And in the cliff background, there's an ocean out there using the water element, and so there's a lot of sort of interesting views. This kind of hangs over the edge. You may wonder why like there's no roof on this. It's because you'll never see it unless you put a waypoint out here or something. Just for efficiency, it's meant to be seen from inside the house. But uh, let's start out. Like, where would I put a waypoint or a spawn point? I'm going to go to what I think of as the entrance of this house, which is this little foyer here. And I'm going to go ahead, grab a waypoint, and place it kind of in the doorway here. Now, this obviously, if I'm thinking this is where I want to spawn, then I need to mark spawn point on it. Um, and you can come up with your own way of labeling these if you want, if it's helpful to you. Like you may want to leave it called Waypoint, but then add like a dash after it and call it like
Mhm.
spawn one or something. Uh, Maybe I want to allow multiple people. This is as we, Dom mentioned before wisely. It's good to make sure you have a few spawn points. And if you're trying
Yeah,
to
if you're making them
direct,
occupiable. If you don't make them occupiable, and you don't mind people being stacked up on top of each other a little bit, then you can have a few. But it's
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 generally good
it's good
practice to
it's good to
have,
have a few anyway, just
and
to.
even if they're next to each other like
Mhm.
this. I like to do it just so that I don't end up with like, I'm spawning. Like a lot of times people spawn in, especially newer people, and they don't move,
Right, and they'll start talking
and they're just
immediately in your
standing
head, and
there, and you're like,
yeah.
why did I show up and inside this, Shrek head
Yeah,
or
I mean,
whatever?
this is like a space design thing too. Like you also want to you can use the direction you're pointing them to kind of direct them towards where you want them to go, where people are going to be congregating.
Is
Um,
yeah, level design 101 here, right?
mhm,
Maybe you're designing a space where it's not about entering from one doorway, but it's about uh, I think about this a lot when I'm designing spaces. If it's a very social space that isn't a specific event like a
mhm,
movie or a classroom or something, maybe it's just like a house like this. It could be cool to spawn people in more disparate locations around the house, and then they find
mhm,
each other by voice.
mhm.
They maybe see each other through some doorways, or they're you know been like, oh, have you seen upstairs? It's really cool.
Yeah, this
It's
depends a lot on the kind of environment you're trying to create. And like you said, it could be where you have different you spawn people in different spots of it so that they can they're kind of automatically exploring, and then they'll be like, oh, there was this cool thing over there. Did you see it? And
hmm
so.
I like
Yeah.
thinking about that a lot. And yeah, I mean, if you're trying to make a more directed thing like I'm doing right here, maybe it's more about like I really want you to come in here first. I want you to see that there's an outside. I want you to go that way. If you follow, video game like level design kind of theory, right? It's like get them to move toward the light or get them
Mhm.
to see the if there's an animated thing in your scene, maybe they're more likely to go toward that first, or some kind of a sign. Text always draws attention. And sometimes in Spoke, I use our sort of navigation mode where I hold the right mouse button. And when you do this, you can fly around like you would if you were in game using WASD. In this case, we don't limit you to the ground. You can fly, around
Mhm.
when you do this. But I kind of like putting myself in the shoes of
The
the
spawn
person who
points and
spawned
kind of,
in
yeah.
and be like, oh, this is kind of cool. Maybe I want them pointing that way because I want them to go up the stairs first, or I want them to
Mhm.
look in here. That sort of stuff. So anyway, that's not about waypoints, but so these are all marked as spawn point. And another pro tip is you may want to set one of these up first before you duplicate it, so that you don't have to set all the flags on
I
everything.
think you might be able to multi-edit them also. I think if you
I think
select
you
multiple,
can.
you might be able to.
Let's see if I turn those off. I think it. Yeah, you're right. You can
Yeah,
multi-edit. Big shout out to Robert, one of our engineers who made that work.
that's a
So
really nice feature.
yeah, good, good. I'm glad you remember that. Okay, so they're all spawn points, and I'm just going to leave them like that. I don't really care if people pile up on top of each other, but I have a few of them there, and that should be enough. Um, but if we were going to say make ones for like these chairs here, maybe we want people to be able to click on the little icon and feel like they're sitting in one of these chairs. Well, we can do that also with waypoints. And so in this case, I'm going to make a waypoint. I'm going to put it. You'll notice it's snapping to all this geometry. Sometimes I'll just put it on the floor in front as a starting point, and then kind of rotate it the way I want, and uh, use the regular move tool so that I can just put it where I want, like that. Now, this would make it feel as though I was standing kind of in front of the chair or above the chair. And what I actually want is to think about where my head would be. Again, the arrow is helpful. Where's my head going to be when I'm sitting? And so um, this little robot's sort of helpful, even though he doesn't have arms. I like to think about where are your shoulders when you're sitting down. Like if my arms were on the arms of these chairs, like what would be
Hmm.
comfortable. So you may pull it
And
down
this
a
could be
little
like a
bit.
little bit weird, like the avatar might be clipping into the chair a little bit or whatever. But like it's
It's more
it's
about what it feels
more
like.
about what the yeah exactly what the viewpoint is.
Sometimes I pull it back a bit so that I'm like not on the edge of my seat.
And it's
Other
possible eventually we'll do things like, okay, when you click on this waypoint, play this animation, this sitting animation, or something like that.
totally.
That's totally in the realm of things we could do pretty easily.
In this case, before I clone it, I'm gonna not have it be a spawn point because I don't want people starting there. I will say it
Hmm.
can be occupied, so nobody else can sit on you while you're sitting there. It'll be clickable. That's how we're gonna get into it. And when I'm sitting, I want to disable motion, so I can't, uh, you know, WASD around like this.
Hmm.
But I will leave teleporting on, so I will not check disable teleporting. I want you to be able to just teleport onto the
Right.
ground
I
and
mean,
get out.
if you had also disabled teleporting there and didn't have another waypoint you can click on, you'd be stuck in the chair. There'd be no other way to get out. So it's important to think about that when you're
Yeah. The only thing you could
configuring this
do is
stuff.
like refresh the room, right?
Right. Right.
Rejoin. Um, so that's pretty good. I like where that is. I'm going to duplicate it and just move it over, say, to this chair. Sometimes I gotta change my angle so I can see a little bit better. About there was pretty good, and then I'll rotate it. I'm using Q and E to rotate, and you can set your snap degrees if you want. If you want more fine grain, oops, I moved the whole room. That's not what I wanted.
Mm.
Um, you know, maybe you want to be facing this other chair a little bit, or think about what the view is. That might be the best seat in the house, actually.
Yeah, and they're not locked into that view or anything like that. They can rotate after. But
Yeah, that's actually a really good thing to mention. I meant to say earlier when we say disable motion, it does not disable like head motion or
mhm.
mouse rotate motion. So
Yep.
you're not stuck in that sense. I don't want all this snapping on. Let's leave that off. I'm going to put a third seat here, only moving on the X and Z axis. And then I'm going to rotate myself around that way. So there you have it. These are definitely not perfect by any means, but I think it's a good start
Hmm.
for 3 seats. Let's talk about another scenario. Maybe in here is going to be a viewing room for like watching a video on the wall or something. Um, and we want to think about like ways of organizing people. Now, I don't actually have any chairs in here, but we could use some waypoints to help people organize themselves a little better. Like maybe I want to have them face this stage and the wall, and so I'm going to place them so that they're uh, standing here. Here's the kind of thing where maybe if you are kind of pretending that they're seats, you could put like the front row a little lower and the next row a
Hmm.
little higher and the back row even higher, something like that. I'm just going to leave them all on the ground like this. But I will say that you can click them, they can be occupied. Um, Maybe it doesn't disable your motion when you get into it.
Yeah. So then you can like click on it and then kind of walk away, and that's fine. That'll
Yeah,
unoccupy it.
and I want to make sure you snap to the floor. And I'll also I will leave off maintain initial orientation. Otherwise, it would get you there, but you'd still be like if you came in from here, you'd
Facing the wrong
you'd
way.
still
Yeah.
be facing the wrong way. So that I like that, and I'm going to duplicate it a few times. Of course, each one I duplicate, I'm going to just tap Q and E to rotate them a little bit, to face more toward the center, something like that. So you could do this kind of thing to line people up. Uh, you could also make one on the stage, like maybe if it's the kind of event where you're going to have people like come up and talk and participate, or maybe take turns doing like a stand up about their work they're
Open
doing
mic
or
or yeah.
something. Yeah, you could put one up here. I used the G key to move that so that I didn't have to move it up. If you hit G, it'll snap, as you move around to the geometry. So um, G is like grab kind of. So maybe I put one up here. So maybe there'll be a microphone here, and that'll put you in that spot. And I'm going to name this one. I'm going to call this Waypoint stage or something. I did not name my other ones except for the spawn ones, but that's
And you
okay.
obviously don't need to have the name waypoint in there. They can be named whatever you want.
Right. Uh, let's make it a little bit fun. Whoever steps up on the stage will also be a little bit bigger than everybody else. Get people's attention. And in this case, maybe I do want it a little lower. So you're, you have the floor. This one I will say can be occupied. It's clickable. Um, same deal, but not snap to floor because I did
We can
slide.
disable teleporting too, so that you have to click on another waypoint to get off the stage, so that you
Let's try
shrink
that.
shrink back down.
Yeah. And then the very last one I'll do, I actually, I've been doing this a lot in scenes lately just because it's kind of fun, is I'm going to put a waypoint way out off the balcony here, and I'm going to turn it around so it's facing the model. And I'm going to make this one super big, like 20 times a normal size person. And this will give the sense that you're a giant and you're looking down at the model, and everything that's going on there. Um, the clickable part of the this is up here, like near the head, so that's where you'll see it floating. In fact, most people probably won't notice it when it's there, but I'll say that it is can be occupied. It's clickable, disables your motion, does not disable. Disable teleporting because I don't want you to stay that size. I want you to
Snap back to one of the
snap
chairs,
back
basically.
to the ground or the chairs or something. And maybe just for good measure, I will put one more here at the balcony edge, so that
That'll be
that's
just kind of the teleport back one, yeah.
yeah, it's an easy one to get to.
And
And
that one, it doesn't have to be occupiable or anything. That one you could just
I'll
leave
tell
kind
you
of.
what, let's make this one clickable, and we'll say maintain your orientation. So
Yeah, yeah,
if you
because that would
click
be a
on it
nice one
from
for this.
here, you'll still be
You'll
facing
still be
this way.
facing that direction,
And if
exactly.
you click it from anywhere else, you'll just arrive at it from
Hmm.
wherever you were facing. Um, that's kind of cool. Let me lower this a little bit more, just so your head is a little lower, so you'll be seeing it from up here. I feel pretty good about that. I think that'll work. Um,
Yep.
and I will save my scene and I will publish it. Should be pretty easy. And then Dom, if you want,
And pop in, yeah.
yeah, you can pop in with me. So I'm gonna hit publish to hubs. It's called Waypoints. That's fine. And I'm just gonna hit save and publish. It does not need to be remixable or anything like that. And I'm gonna hit publish. It's uploading. Should be pretty quick. All done. And now I can click view your scene. Now, um, I'm gonna send the link to Dom in a little chat window. Let me go
You
to
just
here.
you just open the share dialog, and then I'll just copy the link from
That's
there.
true. Well, I just sent it to you anyway.
Okay, that's fine.
I don't want people jumping in. uh,
They, they could probably see the URL bar if they want to jump in.
I think I have it
Oh,
cropped
you have it.
so
Oh,
you
you have
can't
it
see
cropped.
it.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Cool.
I know you guys out there, you know, bomb my hub session. That's okay. It would actually be kind of interesting. Let people in. I'm gonna mute my mic though, so I don't get any echo. There I go. I spawned in, uh, right where I thought I would.
Oh, you sent me a link to the scene, not the room.
That was a big mistake. Sorry about that. Let me send you. Oh, that's not what I wanted to show you. Here we go. Wait. Okay. Wait, let's go back here. Sorry about that. Okay. That's the actual link. I want to see when you spawn in where you spawn, because you're not going to spawn on me. Will you be to my left or my right? I think I'm on like the third one here. I don't know. It says Dom joined the lobby. No, where are you? Where are you?
Let's see. Let me mute myself as well. All right, I spawned
Right
in. Oh,
there.
there we
There's
are.
Dom. And it looks like
Hello.
you.
Yes.
So if you want to see clickable spawn points or waypoints, you won't see these. If I hold my space bar, they don't show up. But any that are, like the stage one over here, or the ones in this room, I can roll over and click on. So, like for example, if I click on one of these guys, it'll take me right to that spot where I'm looking at the stage. And if you were to join me, oh, there's Dom up on
I
the
can
stage, and
teleport onto the
he's a
stage,
little
and I'm a
bit
little bit
bigger.
bigger.
And if I try to, I can't. I don't think. Nope, won't let
Yep.
me because you've occupied it.
Right, but then I can jump back off the stage, and then you'll be able to.
And now I can be the big, whatever I am. I'm like a giant. I'm the big thick crocodile that I was before. So, but like we're still allowed to move out of these points. This one in the middle here, like we said, if I click that, um, I stayed the direction I was facing. So if I came at it from over here, I would keep facing that direction. So
Hmm.
that's like a nice shortcut. Like maybe you can imagine a nature walk or something where you had waypoints all along a cliff and you just want to like quickly get to the end or like snap
Yep,
through them all. Dom, you want to do the honors and be the big giant one in the
I
sky?
will.
Oh yeah. Okay, there you are. If you had your a VR headset on, I would get to see your giant hands.
Yeah. But
Like,
it's really cool to see like the little because everything looks smaller to me too because the camera's scaled up and so it looks pretty cool. And then I can teleport back down to that waypoint
let
over
me do
here,
it.
and then
Let me
it'll
do it so
scale
I
me
can look
back.
down at you. Here I go. Whoa, I'm like big. Now,
Here.
from my perspective, it doesn't necessarily look um, like I'm bigger because I don't have convergence of two eyes like I'm in a headset. But
Hmm.
if you did, like in a VR headset, this is actually really effective to feeling like you're looking
Yeah, it's
down at
pretty
a
cool.
little dollhouse. But to get back, I could click on any of these, and it will bring my scale back. Oh, there's Dom in a seat. There you go. Let me take this seat over here. So now we're sitting here. I'm trying to move and I can't. I'm stuck in the seat unless I want to switch seats or I want to right click and teleport out. And now
Yep.
I'm back to normal. So there's a lot you can do with that, just with those few options. If you think the way I do it is I just go down the list
Right, and
of the check
decide, do I
boxes.
want each of these things? Yeah.
What would happen if I could move? Oh, I wouldn't want to do that. Right. Like, for example, on the, the big one in the sky, I don't really want people flying around in giant mode.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah,
um,
like I said, with scale, especially, like you want to think about, okay, how do they get out of this in a way that forces them to scale back down? Um,
yeah.
and
And
that's
it,
the thing we could do automatically. We could just like scale you back out when you leave a waypoint, but that you might want to be able to do that. You might want to be able to click on a thing and then explore a space as a smaller thing. You have
mhm.
a mushroom you click on or something
You could make a
that
whole
Alice in
world
Wonderland.
underneath the floor of your world
Hmm.
where where
Yep.
the mice live or something. But that's pretty much all the settings you'll need. I'm curious if anybody has other ideas. Maybe there are things we're not thinking of, but so far, these settings that we have served the purpose for the most part.
Hmm.
Uh, I think probably the lack of feedback we have on this feature is more about people not knowing about it.
Yeah,
Uh,
or not knowing all the what all the options mean or how to use them. So hopefully this kind of overview of all a bunch of different use cases will be helpful for people.
yeah,
Um,
and yeah, I mean, just like we were talking about with where you spawn in, think about the waypoints as part of your level design. If
mhm.
I know for me, for the longest time before we had this feature, I always felt weird about putting chairs in a VR space when
Right, because it's like
there's no
how
way
do
to
I
sit.
can't use it, but now it's
Well,
kind of nice because you can, and you could even like spawn directly into these chairs too if you wanted to. You can say like, okay,
I think we just
this is
found a
will be
bug
the
because
oh do
did you jump in that chair right after
I
I?
did I
It
did
put
yeah.
me. It put me back at one of the original spawn points.
It decided that like I
It had to
actually
kick
own the
one of
chair.
us.
I think we probably jumped into it basically at the same time, and then what happened is you lost, and so it's just like, okay, well, I got to put you somewhere else.
Are you saying
Um,
we could make musical chairs?
I think we could actually make musical chairs. I didn't even think of that, but yeah, huh? It would require basically if we and we I don't know we probably won't get into this today, but technically you can put waypoints into Blender files, so you can make like a chair asset that has a waypoint in it, and we can bring them in, and then remove the chairs as you want to. We have to try doing that. I think that'll be fun.
That's a cool idea. I hadn't thought of
Yeah.
that.
Yep.
So now that we know how waypoints work, let's talk a little bit about the new feature that we have that came about in the past week, right?
Yeah. I think we shipped it either this week or last week. I forget when it was, but very recently.
So you'll notice. Well, actually, I don't have my URL showing, so that's not the best thing in the world. However, we don't need it in order to talk about this. But when we go back to Spoke, I'm going to look at the Spoke scene. Like we said in the beginning, every waypoint has a name,
Hmm.
and so uh, if I were to click on one of these, for example, let's say maybe I'll do it with this giant one, for example. let me rename the giant one. I'm going to call it Waypoint. Um,
Or just name it like one word, just like giant or something like that.
I'll
Or
just call it. I'll call it giant. Yeah,
yeah, that'll be easier to
it's just called
make sure.
giant. Yeah, I'd probably recommend you don't use spaces in the names and things. I don't know how
Yeah, I
you.
mean it'll work. Like you just then you have to make sure you type it correctly and all that. So
That's all I'm going to do. I'm just going to name it giant, and I'm going to do one more thing. I'm going to name one of the other ones, like the one on the stage. Um,
and what for example,
oh,
let's do the
I
one on
already.
the
Let's
we
just
can do
call
the
it
one on the
stage.
stage, and then we can disable clicking, for example, on that one.
Oh, okay.
So that you can't click to get onto the stage. You can only, I mean, you'll still be able to teleport onto it, but um,
Not
you know,
clicking.
we could fix that with the floor plan too. We could like disable the floor plan over
Oh,
there
that's
if we
true.
wanted to. Um,
So
but
no,
yes,
it's not clickable, but it is. It can be occupied. Um, do I check spawn point or not?
no, you don't need
You
to. I
don't
mean,
need to.
right.
In other words, that's actually an important thing, right? Um, Even though I'm going to use it as a way to spawn somebody to a specific point, turning off spawn point simply is saying don't add this to the
Don't
list of
right.
other spawn points people could just randomly end up in.
Right.
Um,
And because this isn't just used for spawning too. Like I can change the URL once I'm already in the room. I can type that hash at the end of my URL and it'll teleport me to it. It doesn't have to be just when I'm loading the page either.
all right, so all I have to do is hit publish again.
And then we'll have to
One
reload the
one
page.
is called giant with a capital G, and one is called stage with a capital S. And if I want to spawn into that, so now I can actually just pop back over here and
And we'll
reload.
have to reload. Yeah.
I'll reload just to do that first. And while I'm waiting for this to reload, which should only take a second, we'll talk about how we make it so that you show up in a specific spot. How do we do that, Dom?
Yeah. So if you're familiar with kind of how URLs work in general, you can link to a specific spot in a page, like a normal web page, using the hash symbol, like hash something. Um, and this is referred to as an anchor because that's what the HTML tag is called. But we use the same thing to link to a specific spot in a room. So it kind of works just like a normal URL would. And so you can take the link to a normal hubs room that you already have, and then put hash symbol and then whatever the name of the waypoint is, and that'll be a link to a specific spot in the room. And you can just type that into your current URL bar, and it'll teleport you there right away without reloading the page. But you can also then use that link and send that link to someone, and they'll spawn into it in that spot. Um, and then importantly, like you can take that link, and there's a link element in Spoke, and so you can also drop that link into Spoke as well, and link from one spot of the room into another spot of the room. Um,
So the syntax, I'm typing it in the little chat so people can see it. It would
mhm,
have your URL, blah blah blah, all the garbage, and then like the secret,
mhm.
letters and numbers, and then the name of the room, and then do I just add a? Is it a ampersand or is it a
No, the
the
hash symbol.
hash
Yep.
symbol?
Mhm.
Um, if you're
And
old
then the
like
name
me, the pound sign.
pound sign.
Uh, and then just the name of the waypoint.
Mhm.
So all I'd have to type is pound giant or hash
Yep.
giant like that. Um,
Yep. And then that
so
should
this is essentially. I'm going to make it bigger just so you can see kind of what. Oh, really? It didn't make my text when I typed it.
weird.
Oh, that's a bug. Oh,
Oh,
because
I
it's
think
a
it's the
URL.
URL.
Because it's a
Yeah.
URL. I should have typed it like in quotes or something.
Yeah.
Um,
It's a URL, so try to load it.
blah 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 slash my room and then
Just hash
hash
giant.
giant like that. So that's essentially what the URL will look like. I'll just blow it up a bit so we can see it.
Mhm.
So it's really this end part that's important. Um, and so, like we said, it's not exactly super secure because
Mhm.
somebody could type in those waypoint names until they
Yeah, and you could
found one.
find the waypoint names if you downloaded the GLTF file, you can find it. But it's still very useful. Like I said, this is used, typically to like link into web pages, into some specific part of a web page. Like if you have an article on Wikipedia and you want to link to a specific section, you can usually they'll even use this little symbol um, to link to a specific part. And so it's just like linking into any other web page, except it's a spot in space, which is pretty cool.
So I just typed in hashtag giant,
Yep.
and
And
it just
you're
put
in
me
the.
here. Actually, I didn't have to reload the page to do
Mhm.
it, which is really
Yeah,
cool.
exactly. It doesn't have to reload the page, which is really nice.
And so if I typed stage instead, it'll just jump me to there,
Yep.
and I can still get out of it the way I did
And but now
before.
you'll see like I can't. Actually, I can see the stage. Did you make that not clickable? I forget if we did that.
I think I made it non-clickable. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's the only way on the stage is to know that.
Oh, I think I'm in the old room.
Oh, you didn't
I
reload.
didn't reload. Yeah, but yeah, you'll see. So it's no longer clickable. So the only way to get onto that waypoint is to know that you know waypoint name and to type in that URL.
Which also means that in your space you could paste a link like this that would normally say visit room on it when you click it.
Exactly.
And when I click this visit room button now, uh, was that working? No.
Yeah,
Oh,
it worked for
it
me.
worked for you.
See.
It just pops you right on to the spot,
Yep.
um, which is really cool.
Yeah, exactly. And so you can put these into Spoke as well, um, to create, teleporters between rooms. And it's still pretty limited. Like I said, this wasn't even an intended feature. We just kind of noticed that it worked. Um, so it's still going to show the thumbnail of the room and all that. And we want to have better kind of support for links in general, for kind of custom links, so that you can make them look more however you want. But um,
Like
it's
maybe you
still a
don't want
pretty.
that to say visit room. You want it to say like, go here, go to
Right,
Waypoint
and we
or
have we
something.
have a feature in the work. Kevin's working on a feature that it'll say teleport instead if it detects that it's a room, a link to the same room that you're already in. And also we're going to allow you to just link to just the hashtag. So it'll be like a room relative link, because the way you have to do it right now is you'd have to publish the room, get the URL for the room, add the hashtag, then put it into Spoke, which is a little roundabout. But what we're going to allow soon is you'll be able to just put the hashtag into the URL field, and that'll be like this hash in this room that you're in right now. And so that'll allow you to create scenes that already have a bunch of links to specific spots in the room, without having to republish it a bunch. Um, so that's coming soon.
That's awesome. Yeah, we've had a lot of requests for like, can I make a 3D object the link, or can I make
Yeah,
that sort
yeah,
of
and
stuff? And
that's yeah, we're figuring out the right way to do that, but like that's definitely on our roadmap. But it's been requested a bunch. So whether that comes in the form of like a generic kind of triggers system where you'll be able to
like click
specify
on the
when I click on this
chair,
thing, then go
right?
somewhere. Or if it just comes from like today we were discussing maybe even simpler solution where it's just like, okay, any of the objects you can put already into Spoke also have a link property, and it's like, okay, this this Sketchfab model, I can click on it to go to this URL as well. So some form of that will come. Um,
Cool. Yeah. And so we're curious what people think. I want to, if you have ideas about how to use this, or
mhm.
maybe there's some project you started a while ago, and maybe you were trying to work around not having this feature, and now you realize, oh my gosh, this would have saved me a ton of time. We'd love to hear that kind of feedback, either on the videos here themselves, or in our Discord especially. How are you going to use waypoints, or like how have they helped your projects, because you might have ideas that help someone else. So we'd love to
And I
hear.
noticed just looking back at chat, Liv was asking if we were covering the anchor point thing, and we just did. And then Fernando commented that was a really nice feature, and he's actually the one who implemented the anchor point thing.
Yay,
So
Fernando.
yeah, shout out to Fernando.
That was an awesome feature. And I particularly like the webbiness of the design, using it
Yeah, well,
similar to like a URL. I mean,
and like I
that's
said, what ended up being really cool is we didn't even think about the like fact that you could then link to it from within the same room. It kind of just we're like, oh yeah, of course that works because it's a URL. And so it's when you follow these kind of patterns, nice things emerge,
that's
which is
that's
cool.
why we have web standards and things like that,
Hmm.
right? To preach the Mozilla uh, ways of thinking. So
Yeah, and Fernando saying it'd be nice if there was a way to like move multiple people with a waypoint. I think that'd be really cool, like to kind of do the guided tour thing. So like be able to say like, okay, this waypoint, it's going to teleport everyone when I click on it, and be able to kind of move groups of people around. That'd be kind of
How
interesting.
difficult? Speaking of that, how difficult do you think it would be to support? You did mention waypoints like embedded in an object kind of a thing.
Yeah, you're
To
going to
sup
ask about movable waypoints. Yeah,
movable,
yeah,
can I have a piggyback so people can
yeah,
jump on
yeah.
me and I
Um,
move them
so
around?
that's not a thing right now, but I think it would literally be a one line change. So right now we only move you when you click on it. The change would just be like basically every frame we continue to put you in the waypoint.
Maybe a
Um,
checkbox like is continuous or like
yeah,
is
I mean, we
something.
might not even have to. I mean, I think it'd be performance wise, it'd be fine. Like maybe like when you disable movement, we just do it automatically, or maybe we make it a separate checkbox. But you could do pretty cool things. Like you could put a waypoint on an avatar.
Oh
Um,
yeah,
so yeah, so you can put a waypoint on an avatar, and then yeah, you could ride that avatar
it'd be
and
Falcor, and you guys could hop on my back and I fly
yeah,
around. And
exactly. You make like a horse or something, and then people can ride the avatar. That'd be really cool. And it would not be very hard to do. So that'd be pretty cool. And we similarly with the media frame stuff I've been working on, we're talking about having that also be something that will be movable, so that then you can on an avatar put a media frame on it, and then attach things to that media frame on the avatar. Yeah, like by having these like kind of simple reusable components, I think we can do lots of really cool stuff.
oh man, I just now you've got all these ideas going in my head. Movable waypoints. I can make like a Ferris wheel or a
Because then they'd be
amusement park
animatable.
roller
Yeah,
coaster and make everybody sick. Oh, it sounds great.
yeah, it'll be really cool. Yeah, people were asked. There was actually a question in the discussion group on the GitHub discussion about making elevators, and one of the ways we could do that would be by adding support for movable waypoints. The tricky part is like using animations. We don't synchronize animations right now, like GLTF model animations, so we'd probably have to add support for that if we wanted to use it for that. But um, yeah, I think movable waypoints is definitely something we could support pretty easily, and I think we probably will implement that.
Well, that's awesome. I don't think there's anything left really to talk about, with waypoints themselves. But yeah, I think these examples kind of cover it pretty well. So
Yeah, hopefully this will be like a good resource we can point people at when they're asking about waypoints and just all the different kind of use cases. I think this covers a bunch of the common ones we see, but it's by all means not the only way you can use these things. I'm sure there are other creative ways people will come up to use these, especially now with the new linking stuff. I bet we're going to see kind of interesting uses of that. Um,
very cool. Well, I guess yeah. I guess that's it for today. It's weird. I'm so used to us using Blender all the time, and we didn't even need to touch it, which is great.
yeah, maybe next week. I think Blender 2.9 will be out by next week, so maybe we can do like a little overview of that. Assuming the Hubs extension still works in Blender 2.9,
Yeah,
it should. If it doesn't, we'll have to update it. But yeah,
that would be cool. Well, Dom, thanks again for being here and lending us your expertise on the topic. And yeah, I hope we see you guys next week. Thanks for tuning in. And until then, happy hubsing
Hubsing.
hubbing. No, it'd be hubsing, I guess. All right.
Yeah.
Well, that's it. And we'll see you guys soon. All right.
Yep.
Bye.